Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another vintage card flashback, and today we are taking a look at two action figures which are very special to me. On our left, we have the Timothy Drake Robin from the Batman Returns action figure line, and on our right, we have the transforming Dick Grayson with crime fighting suit and sudden reveal mask. And this one belongs to the Batman Forever line of action figures. Both of these action figures were produced by Kenner Toys back in the 90s. I had both of these figures way back in the day. Much like now, they're both mint on card. The crazy thing is that I purchased these recently off of eBay, and both of them are actually in way better shape than the ones I had back in the day. I sold, like, maybe about 8 years ago, I sold my collection of carded Batman figures, and two of the figures in that collection that I sold were these two. And ever since I sold that collection of figures, I kind of, not that I regretted selling the entire lot, but I was very fond of these two figures, and it kind of bummed me out every time I'd look at my display space and see where these figures used to be. So, much like the last month, I've been on this kick for like finding vintage carded action figures. They don't always have to be figures that I had back in the day. I just want pieces of like action figure history. And for me, I'm very fond of the Robin character, and I'm just really nostalgic for these action figures in general, especially the time period they represent. For the Batman Returns Robin figure here, this was kind of a big deal. This came out in 1991. And I remember first hearing about this action figure at my local comic book shop. And back then, some of the comic book shops in my area, whenever you'd buy your comic books, they'd always make sure to include a free issue of a Comic Shop Weekly, I believe that was called. It was a weekly newsletter that kind of kept the fans up to date with what was going on in Marvel, DC, and the independent scene. This was pre-internet, so one of the ways you got your news about comic books, besides getting it, firsthand from like the shop owners and stuff, is that you'd read these comic book newsletters, and one of them was Comic Shop Weekly. I believe that was the name of it. And in one particular issue, they were talking about how Kenner was releasing a Timothy Drake Robin figure. So during the 90s, Tim Drake was kind of a big deal, especially around the time when he had his own miniseries. So what was interesting about this figure is that it kind of came out at a very timely fashion. And what was even more interesting is that it was included with the Batman Returns line. The Batman Returns line is pretty much just based off of the Batman sequel that starred Michael Keaton, I think Michelle Pfeiffer, and Danny DeVito. So it was kind of cool that you were actually getting a Robin figure, even though Robin, didn't make an appearance in the film. But then again, most of the figures in this line were very kind of like imaginative takeoffs on the Batman character to begin with. Like a lot of these figures here, it's Batman featured in costumes that weren't in the movie. There's like an Arctic Batman, there's an Air Attack Batman, Deep Dive Batman, Thunder Whip Batman. The Penguin, it was a interesting figure because it didn't look like Danny DeVito. It was pretty much just a reused Penguin figure from the previous line of superhero figures. I'm trying to remember the name of the Kenner line. I think it was Superpowers, the Superpowers line. So I think that's where the Penguin figure came from. And it was kind of cool. You got play sets like Wayne Manor or the Batcave. You got cosplay items, like if you wanted to dress up as Batman. But it was just so cool that in this line of action figures, they actually pulled from the comic books and they gave you the actual Tim Drake Robin. This wasn't some sort of fantastic redesigned Robin. This was actually the Robin that you got in the modern comic books at that time. And his design is very reminiscent of the 90s. It's kind of weird because he kind of has a flat top haircut. And I don't know, this is a period of time I'm very nostalgic for. During the late 80s, early 90s, as a child, I think that's when I became more self-aware of actually collecting comic books. You know, for me, they weren't just something I'd buy at like at the 7-Eleven anymore. It was something that I sought out at like at, you know, through the direct market, like actually going to a comic book shop every Wednesday when the new books were released. And for me, it was kind of special because, you know, shortly when I got a little bit more serious about comic book collecting is when they reintroduced, you know, the Robin character. But this was Timothy Drake. You know, a few years prior to that, you know, they killed off Jason Todd. So yeah, very fond memories of this figure. It's awesome. I love the card art. You know, here you have the Tim Drake Robin with his grapple hook accessory, and you see that over here. During the 90s, that was a play feature or accessory that was very common. You always get some sort of rocket launcher that came with like a grappling hook. But the figure's cool. It's about 5 points of articulation, if I had to guess. The head rotates. The arms rotate. It's nothing fancy compared to like today's action figures, but it's still cool nonetheless. Very fond and nostalgic for the card backs of like the older figures. I love kind of seeing this like micro catalog of action figures that are available. I love the colored instructions and how to use accessories. Yeah, great time for being a kid and just being into toys. Odd enough though is that when this figure came out, I was kind of already too old to be playing with toys. I was like a freshman in high school, and it was bad enough that I was into comic books. Because most of my friends, you know, by the time we got to high school, you know, there's something we weren't really interested in. But for whatever reason, I couldn't outgrow comic books and collecting toys. You know, I wasn't really playing with toys at this point, but you know, I did like to collect them. And this is before I even knew that, you know, collecting toys was a thing. I just like to have them. So yeah, I'm very happy to add this to my collection of carded Batman figures. If anything, I do want the Catwoman from the Batman Returns line, and maybe like a plain Batman, but we'll see if I can find one for a decent price. And over here we have the Chris O'Donnell Batman Forever action figure. I remember liking this figure a lot, and what's even awesome is that recently I got the transforming Bruce Wayne figure from this line of action figures. So I kind of feel like I've completed the pair. Again, I'm very fond of the card art. Here you have Chris O'Donnell as Robin, and he's unmasked, and he's holding the mask in one hand. And here in the Starburst, it says, "Become Robin with color change mask." So this is kind of neat. Kind of has snap-on armor. He has these cool like fighting blades. I think these are either gauntlet pieces or shin guards. And this is the body adaptive tech suit. Great action figure, much like the other figure we're looking at. Very limited in articulation. You're looking at 5 points. You know, the head rotates, the arms rotate, and the legs rotate. This is way before, you know, they'd give figures like, I mean, G.I. Joe did it at the time, but in terms of Kenner, they weren't really known for giving their figures like elbow articulation or like knee articulation. And as you can see here, his cape's removable. He kind of just pry it off his head, and then you can like seat them in the Batmobile or whatever. Again, much like the other card back, you have colored instructions on how to use the figure. They talk about attaching the chest plate and the arm guards and leg guards. And they also make mention of how if you dip the figure's head in cold water, it'll reveal his mask. But with warm water, his mask will disappear. So that's a fun play feature. And then, much like the other line of Batman figures, you know, there's always like a dozen different kinds of Batman. There's like Sonar Batman, Night Hunter Batman, Blast Cape. And this is the Bruce Wayne figure I was talking about earlier, the transforming Bruce Wayne. So now that I have Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne, I kind of complete that pairing. There's also a Street Biker Robin, cosplay grapple gun, but it shoots discs. And then there's a Two-Face figure, which I looked at maybe like last week, and same with the Riddler. The Robin cycle, even today, I think this thing looks horrible. But if I ever came across it in the store or second hand for a cheap price, I probably would pick it up just for nostalgia's sake. This is odd too. I didn't notice this until now. So with the logo of the bat, the body adaptive tech suit, there's actually a description about it. Developed exclusively for Batman's ultimate showdown with Two-Face and the Riddler, the scientifically advanced body adaptive tech suit, codenamed BAT, actually senses and assesses danger, instantly providing from within the weaponry which Batman needs for each threat. It's not just a bat suit, it's an automatic crime-fighting arsenal. So that's kind of neat that they'd classify his toy-specific armor as something fun. So yeah, very, very nostalgic for these two action figures. And right now, I think this might... It doesn't necessarily complete my collection of carded Batman figs. But in terms of the ones I've been like actively looking for, I think these were the two that I wanted the most. If I could, I'd like to find some older Toy Biz carded Batman figures from the '89 movie. But we'll see. If I can find those for like, $15 or less, I'll pick them up. But I'm not really looking to go above that. So yeah, this is a fun trip down memory lane. I just wanted to share it with you. So, if you're like me and you grew up during this time period, I hope this kind of brings back some memories. If you're too young to actually know about these kind of toys, the next time you're like in a thrift store or collectible toy shop, give these older figures a look. Just because they don't have like 30 points of articulation, and even if they're a little bit smaller, there's something very cool about this era of toys. I love the package design, and the card art's great. There was a lot of thought involved in terms of designing the accessories to make these toys like very playable for children. So yeah, very nostalgic about this time period, and more importantly, more happy that I actually have these again. Alright, with that being said, once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for your continued likes, comments, and support. I greatly appreciate it. So, until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one.